Hello and welcome. We're here to prepare for the church at home for the Trinity Sunday coming up. So I'm Father Joshua Trefny.
Father Ed Estock. We're coming to you from the dining room table, as is our new custom in this Easter season, and so at the priest house. And we are contemplating what is this mystery of the Trinity. Some would say it's the most difficult thing in church life, and certainly it's the most difficult thing for priests and preachers to make applicable, because it's so,
it's a mystery.
It's a mystery.
It's the mystery, right? Of the
and a lot of times we cop out on that. So you'll hear many homilies about the Trinity and say, well, the bottom line is it's a mystery, so that means I don't have to work on it. But we are not going to take that tact this week.
Father Ed was telling me this great story because he has a little grandniece that he went to see a dance recital for.
Addison. And she's a sweet thing. She's 3 and she's almost 4 years old. She's going to be 4 this summer. And of course, my thoughts about Addison and her dance recital, the first one ever, is because Father Joshua always reminds me of the Greek word for called perichoresis. And perichoresis is a Greek word that means literally to dance around. That has been used, I guess we learned today, from St. Maximus the Confessor, was the first one to publicly use this perichoresis as a description of the inner life of God, and as an invitation for our spiritual lives in God. Mm-hmm. So we have the 3 persons of the Blessed Trinity, and they are conceived of as dancing around one another in relationship. Mm-hmm. That's the whole point. So that brought us to Addison's
and she's like
her dance
adorable.
Recital. She is really, really, really cute. And so while I was watching her and her mother practice, I could see that Addison was very carefully watching her mother and then doing the steps. And you know, that's ballet, so they have a word like, turgite, ballet, and whatever, these words.
And all that.
Yeah, plie and all that kind of stuff. So mother would be saying that word, and then Addison, but she was not only listening to the music and to her mother, she was watching what Elizabeth was doing. Mm-hmm. And so then I saw the recital. They videotaped the recital because we couldn't all go. But sure enough, there she was. And sometimes she knew what the next move was. And so she would get there on time. Other times I could see she was looking at the teacher and she realized, so she was a little bit behind. Mm-hmm. But so she was watching. So the whole point of this recital of these 3 little girls was that they were trying to stay in step and imitate, if you will, the teacher's moves and participate. So sometimes they were leading because the other children were looking at each other. Mm-hmm. So this notion of perichoresis and God, the 3 persons of the Blessed Trinity, dancing around one another, and the invitation to do the same, brought us to this idea of imitating.
Yeah, and so we all do this not just in our spiritual life, right? But we do it in all of our life. Anytime we've learned any skill, from piano to basketball or dance to whatever, we watch someone first and then we join in, and there becomes this cooperative participation. And so the same thing is true in the Trinity, right? The Son sees what the Father is doing. That's what he tells us. I only do the things I see my Father doing. I only say the things I hear my Father saying. So he's watching, imitating, looking at what the Father does, and then he does those things too. And then the Spirit teaches us, the Spirit gives us the ability to see what Jesus does and to hear what Jesus does, so that we can then participate in that same opportunity to dance, to play, to be around, and to watch, and then participate.
Companionship. So, and Father used a great word. He said the Holy Spirit gives us the power or the ability to see what Jesus is doing, and etc. And we call that really the eyes of faith. So when we receive the Holy Spirit, as we heard in the gospel last week, receive the Holy Spirit. Whose sins you forgive are forgiven, whose sins you are not forgiven. I send you in my name. So that this gift of the Holy Spirit is to open our eyes, our minds, and our hearts to be able to see. And it is in seeing that we can imitate. I was thinking of a great parishioner's witness of faith several years here. His father had died tragically when he was 12 years of age, and violently. And so it was his whole life a process of trying to forgive the people that had killed his father. But it had a personal implication for him because he had sons himself. And what he admitted is that when his sons got to the age of, his oldest son got to the age of 12, when his father died, he said, I started to panic because I had never experienced fathering after 12 years of age. And now I had to father without having had the experience or been able to watch my father parent me. And that was such a beautiful example of how we in the church and as Christians are called to live the Christian life by our communion with others and our communion with Jesus, of course, so that we can learn to be a Christian the way Jesus is, in a sense, in relationship to God and the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, so part of it is us, where are we looking or listening? Are we listening for the music? And are we looking to see how the leader is leading the dance?
Right.
Are we following with our eyes, the eyes of our hearts, the ears of our hearts, the movements and the voice of God as we are walking through our daily lives? Right. Are we recognizing the dance that's happening? Right. Or are we just going to the beat of our own drum?
Yeah, and so that was my question when we came to this place, is that to what extent do we as Christians and individuals, persons, I guess, live our lives as individuals rather than as persons? Because persons means in relationship and in communion. Yeah. Individuals is just like our biological flesh. So I'm wondering, so much of life today and difficulty is expressed by people saying they're lonely, they're isolated, they're by themselves, nobody loves them, they are not extending themselves in love to others. So the question I guess we have is, to what extent do we see our daily walk as a dance with God and with others?
Yeah, and so much too of where we find our identity as individuals in the culture, from the cultural perspective, is like we decide as an individual what our identity is. And for some people that's their career, or it's their sexuality, or it's their the relationship that they choose to be in, but it's their identity, like that becomes their identity, instead of allowing as Father said, the personhood to decide our identity. So, and personhood, like we learn from the Trinity, 3 persons, 1 God, is about relationship. And so we find our identity first as persons in relationship to God, and then in relationship to others as we dance around in the dance of life. And then we receive the identity, as we hear in our second reading, as sons and daughters adopted by God. And then we can go out and do whatever God is calling us to do, because we know who we are first.
Right. And of course, Jesus ends the beautiful speech, if you will, in the gospel, and he says, I am with you always. And so if we don't know and recognize and see and are not imitating Jesus, it's because we didn't believe or didn't realize he's with us. So stop walking alone and dance with the God who loves you.
Yeah.
Right.
So join us in the dance this week, and God bless you all.